all of a sudden, when you kind of come over the hillside, it was like probably hectares. It was just field after field after field after field, like as far as your eye could see, of lavender. It was incredible. There was no road nearby. You could not drive by this. It was just, we were so lucky.
Hello and welcome to One-Off Travel Stories. I'm your host, Andrew Tawas-Cherna. Here each episode, I chat with someone about one of their favorite travel stories. That one story they've told countless times to friends and family around the dinner table. On this episode, we're joined by Rachael Rogers. Rachael is the founder of For Your Story Vacations, a boutique travel agency specializing in curated European experiences. Prior to starting the agency, she was actually an actor, and while she traveled around for gigs, she realized she had a passion for travel as well as for acting, and she wanted to figure out how she could sort of combine these two passions. And she actually found a job as a tour guide in Paris. And that led to her eventually starting the travel agency. But there's a bunch of travel that happened in between the two, and today she's going to tell us about a trip she took to Provence in France that had kind of a spectacular moment to it, but I won't spoil it. I'll let her tell us more. Hey, Rachael, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. I like to ask, since I'm usually talking to travelers, where are you calling in from?
I'm currently in Galway, Ireland, so in the west of the Republic of Ireland.
Oh, super. That's amazing. Is this actually, I know you've been moving around a lot. So is this like home base for you at the moment?
At the moment, it's home base. Yes, my husband's actually from Galway, so my husband's from Ireland. So it feels even a little bit more of a home base at the moment, just because this is like his local.
Okay, so he's home and it's your home base. That's
exactly.
Awesome. How long have you guys been there?
We're here just for 2 months, so it's lovely. It's a little bit longer than our normal.
Yeah. So I prefaced a little because I've been reading a little bit up on your business and checking out your Instagram and stuff. So maybe because it's so unique, you've been kind of moving around Europe, from what I understand it, for like a decade or something like that. So I'd love to get a little bit of background on how that all started.
Yeah. So we were both living in New York City, and I have a BFA in theater performance. So I had moved out to New York City and had been doing theater for the last 7 years, touring, did some children's musicals around the United States and lots of different shows in the city. So that was really fun. Cool. But I was kind of looking for a change. I really had kind of stopped focusing on getting up early in the morning for auditions, and I kept looking for cheap flights to like head somewhere else. And this was in a time when there were still all those really good cheap flights. I feel like post-COVID, those days, it's a little painful now, the flight prices. But so I was just eager to like look for a new sort of work that I could do that would incorporate a theatrical side while also allowing, talking about travel and, just something that's completely different. And so I started looking up tour guiding jobs in Europe. And I came across Fat Tire Bike Tours in Paris, and they're in lots of different cities around Europe. But I reached out to them, and they asked me to send in a video about myself. So I did. And then they called me up and did a phone interview. And at the end of it, they're like, great, we'd love you to come in for a second interview in Paris in January. And this was November. So I just decided to sell everything, and I booked a one-way ticket to Paris, which is kind of crazy with an interview, because I was like, well, I can just come back and sublet something in New York. Like, it's not a big deal.
Sure.
And so that's kind of how it started. It catapulted me to that. So I was a historical bike tour guide in Paris, and I was going around giving tours of Versailles and all the different neighborhoods. It was like the best job I ever had. You just get to drink wine and be with happy people on vacation that are excited to be riding around Paris in a romantic city, and you're exercising. So you're in the best shape of your life, but you're drinking wine at lunch, and your job is totally okay with it. They're like, yes, drink with the clients and ride a bike. Was a little dangerous maybe, but like we weren't drinking that much. But it was fun.
France, yeah.
So yeah, France. Yeah, went in France. So that's kind of how I started traveling And then when we came back, we had two weddings a week apart. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. So we did one wedding in Kansas City, Missouri. And then we did another 7 days later in Ireland because my husband has 39 first cousins. So as an Irish Catholic person, like, the whole, how many people would be left out? Like, that's just absurd. All his aunts and uncles. So we did two weddings a week apart and we helped a lot of people like head on over and like helped with those things. And then
Okay.
after we came back from our wedding, that's when I decided to launch my business. And my husband is an advertising copywriter, and he was like, I can do this remotely. So he launched his own business. And then we were like, why are we in the city when we can do this from anywhere? Like, if we're both working for ourselves and we're like working remotely, we don't have to just stay in Queens. And we love New York. Like, I love New York. But, we'd had like a solid 7 years there to get to explore it. So that's November 2016. That's when we left the city, and we just one suitcase each, and we've been traveling since then.
Okay, so yeah,
So long-winded.
there's a few awesome points here. One, if anyone's listening about like and thinking about their career, I love the point about like, okay, I've been in theater, I love travel. How do I combine these? And you landed on, being a historical tour guide, which does kind of combine them. You've got to be, on it in front of people.
And you have to make history interesting. Like, I loved getting teenagers. It was so much fun to be like, this is where Marie Antoinette was like decapitated. It's really fun. You can get dramatic.
And that sort of kicked off. I mean, had you traveled much before that time in Paris?
I had I did a month and a half backpacking with my mother, who's so good to do that. She was 68 and she was like, yeah, I'll go backpacking around Europe with you. And so we did that for a month and a half, and that was amazing. And I'd previously done like a lot of like cool trips in high school, but I mean, nothing to the extent of what we had been doing. It was short, like 2-week trips, 1-week trips, so still very fortunate to have traveled what I had previously, but nothing to the extent of, I'm sure there's a lot of people who by the age of 20 had like gone all over Europe or something.
Maybe, yeah, but that sounds lovely. So then jumping ahead, when you guys moved back and decided to sort of work on the road, yeah. So tell me a little bit about, because I know you for the story vacations and what you ended up landing on, which feels like kind of the next step or from was it Fat Tire Bike Tours, like
Yeah.
taking that and making it something more real.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the thing that I saw a lot, because have you been to Paris before? Or, it's a big city.
Yeah.
There's like 20 neighborhoods in Paris. And so it's really easy to just end up booking your Airbnb or your hotel in a very bad arrondissement. Like, Central Paris is lovely. And there's lots of areas outside of Central Paris that are also lovely, but there's also some like neighborhoods you don't want to end up in. They're not going to have your boulangerie and the patisserie and the charming little bistro. Like, you're going to be like, this looks dodgy. So I just had so many like guests that I was, taking care of, on my, 6-hour bike tour. They were saying like, oh, we've eaten the worst food. And actually somebody scammed us in the metro train station. And then I got robbed, and somebody came up to me and they said they were deaf, and they asked me to give them money, but somebody behind me like took my wallet out. I heard every story, and it made me sad because these were people who it was their dream to come to Paris. And maybe it was their one time they're going to get to go,
Right.
and they didn't pre-book their Eiffel Tower tickets and they stood in line for 4 hours. Or, you're wasting your time. You're not eating good food. You're overspending. And I think it just like tainted their entire experience. And so that's kind of what inspired me, that I was like, people don't need the next Expedia like flight hotel combo travel agent. They need a travel planner. They need somebody who is going to give you the nitty-gritty details of like being in neighborhoods that you'd feel comfortable walking alone as a solo female traveler at 3 a.m., that have the things you're interested in doing and seeing. I just think going down, because a lot of times people do these big details. I got my flight, I got my hotel, but they don't think about the small details, which actually are the biggest ones of your trip, because they're what leave the impression on you. Everyone's going to come home with funny stories. Wild stuff happens when you travel. Nothing's going to be perfect, but I just saw that there was a real need there to have something that was much more than the traditional travel agent.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. I went to school outside of Paris, so I know it pretty well.
That's amazing. Wow.
And
Really?
so I can sort of jive with what you're saying. I've been around the arrondissements, and yeah, there's depending on where you are, definitely a difference.
Yeah.
So So I take it then, like by this point, have you done or hosted or led, if you will, trips all over Europe? How does it look today?
Well, you know what's so funny is I haven't. I haven't personally hosted, and it's something I'm going to do this year that I'm like just getting ready to launch. I'm going to start doing some personal led tours around Tuscany. I don't know why I haven't. How silly of me. I think I just have been in my business for so long, and now I actually have a team helping me that I feel like I
Yeah.
have time to leave my laptop, which is like a great thing. So, but no, I'm going to though. Andrew, I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah, no, I just kind of assumed you were hopping in for some of these, right? If you're helping organize, but um, no, that's amazing. Kind of a really interesting story going from New York to living nomadically, spending time in Europe. Yeah, I think a lot of people talk about doing that stuff, and now I've met a few people who have kind of made it real. So always fun to hear. With that though, let's this podcast I really try to focus on like one really interesting, impactful travel story. I like that your company is also called For the Story Vacations. Kind of on the same thread as what I've been after was
Yeah.
travel stories tend to be. I mean, they're just memories at a point of time where folks tend to like really remember them because it was at least a very happy moment or intense moment or
Yeah.
something. As you said, people go to Paris, for instance, and they've been dreaming about it for years. So like that time will just imprint on their mind. Anyway, yeah, let's jump into yours. So, give us a little bit of background on what year is it? Where were you traveling? What were you doing there? That kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
So it was 2018, the summer of 2018, and we had been on the road for a couple years at that point. Actually, I'm sorry, it was 2017.
Hmm.
So we'd been on the road for a bit at that point, and I knew that I wanted to spend a good amount of time in Provence. And Provence, while not the same like distance and maybe scale as Tuscany, things are much closer together. There's still so much to see and do. And I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time to really take in Provence and the entire region. So we decided to do 3 months in Provence. It was June. And
Nice.
then we essentially stayed June, July, August. So kind of getting to go through, and I wanted to make sure, we got to be there, seeing all the vineyards, getting to, go like the Gorge de Verdon. Essentially, it's like the Grand Canyon of France.
Right.
Getting to go kayaking, just getting to do a lot of the things that I think a lot of people don't associate necessarily with France, but also doing all the markets and the antiques, all these things. So I was like, I want to be there in like its prime time. So we did June, July, and August. Yeah.
That's a yeah. That sounds incredible. What a way to spend a summer. And yeah, I imagine June there is gorgeous. I mean, the whole summer, but I know, does it get super hot there as well?
It does. I will tell
Yeah.
you. And once mid July all the way through August, it does get like pretty hot.
Yeah, I know they get sort of heat waves and really strong heat waves. And were you doing sort of 3 months here, 3 months there? Was this normal at the time?
No, normally we were doing 1 month, 1 month, 1 month. We would move like
Okay.
every month. Yeah. So this was definitely more unique. And we were having a car rental for the full 3 months. So that was also different because we do a mix and match of like, sometimes like if we're in a city, we don't need a car. And a lot of times we try to avoid renting a car unless we're doing a road trip or we're in an area that obviously requires a vehicle. So this was kind of different
Yeah.
because we were moving around for 3 months. So we were moving every couple of days.
Wow. Okay, that's a
Yeah.
lot.
It was a lot.
Um, and then in Provence, where were you? Where were you staying?
Well, we were constantly, sorry, for this specific story
Yeah.
or, okay. We were
Actually,
in,
no. Like, so sorry, just because you said so in Provence, were you moving every few days?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have like a home base or something like that. You weren't staying at like a little cottage or like in town or yeah.
No, I think the maximum we stayed in Avignon for 5 nights. I think that was
Okay.
our longest stay over the 3 months.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
And so you were just moving. That's yeah. That's a lot of moving around.
yeah.
Wow.
Because I was really like, when I'm sending clients places, I want to be able to be like, I've spent time in that village. I ate, I had an
Yeah,
omelette
of
de fromage
course.
there, like, so I was really like, and my husband was very good to be like, yeah, okay. But because we have so little, we actually got pretty good. We had like a separate bag when we just like, you just get really good at like packing and unpacking, because when you own only two pairs of shoes, it's not too hard. Like it gets pretty easy in truth.
Okay, before I ask about your specific story, what kind of places were you staying in along the way? Like, yeah,
So we did some hotels,
yeah,
and we did a couple lovely 4 stars. We did like staying at like some like chateaus, which was really cool. So it was maybe like family run, but it was like an old chateau that they'd redone. We stayed in some bed and breakfasts. We specifically, we stayed at this one artist. The village name is slipping me, but it's an entire village of artists. It's one of the tiniest little villages in Provence, and he was a really interesting gentleman. So he was, I think he was like 85 years old. He
yeah.
was he was like fairly up there. He was the artist, and his wife was probably 20 years younger than him. And she was gorgeous. And I was like, good for you, sir. And and he like we had an aperitif with them on their little balcony. And then he invited us down to his art studio. And his specialty, besides landscapes, was painting prostitutes from all over the world where he's traveled. So he was like, this was a prostitute in Madrid. This was a prostitute in Paris. It was just, and you're like, you also can't like laugh because this is his life's work. I mean, it was really good, but it was just alarming that it was just it was like in a little cave underneath the house, and it was just prostitutes everywhere. I would have known they were prostitutes, but he said it. I was like, oh, he loves to paint beautiful women like Picasso. But
Right.
he was like, oh, they're prostitutes. I was like, okay.
Specifically, that is his muse.
Those are exactly. So we stayed with like unique bed and breakfast like that. And then we did a lot of Airbnbs. There's a lot of great Airbnbs in
Yeah.
Provence, however. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sufficiently jealous, so that's that sounds amazing. Let's jump into your the specific story that I know you want to tell that happened while you were in Provence.
Yeah. So we were nearing the end. We were about midway through. So it was late July,
Mm.
and we ended up in the village of Riez, Riez,
Hmm.
and it's this lovely little village, really charming. A lot of great restaurants, beautiful architecture, and we were staying there for 2 nights, and we stayed at this lovely bed and breakfast, and it was just beautiful. And we were getting ready to the next day then to head out to this B&B, which is going to be kind of like the main place that we stayed during our story. But to start off with, we parked in the village parking lot there. And a lot of times in Provence, most of it's all free parking, which is really lovely.
Yeah.
And so we parked the car, and it was on a Saturday, and we were really surprised. We had to go back to the car that Saturday evening to pick up something from the trunk that I'd left, and I was really surprised there weren't any cars in the parking lot. And I was like, that's weird. Why is there not more? Like, it's a Saturday night. You think there'd be more people parked here. It's free parking. And the next day we woke up and it was Sunday. And we'd been in Provence now for like a solid, month and a half, but it was the
Yeah.
Sunday market. And our little Citroen car, like our little what would you call it? Like a Fiat, like it's really tiny little car, was in the middle of the market, and they had just moved the car to like a bit left,
Oh
so they
no.
could get their like their structures up. So we walk over and we're just mortified because I mean there's so many stalls. There's like the
Yeah.
fishmonger and the cheat, all these things. And the car is just in the middle of it. So we can't leave or go anywhere. So we're just like, well, we have to wait until the market has been like taken down. And so we like went
You don't
and
want to be the people with the car in the middle of the market. I'm sure you're
yeah,
just like, okay, well, let's not go anywhere near our car.
let's not go anywhere near our car. And of course, they're going to hear my accent, like, because I was like, Keith, you have to talk to them first. And Keith has actually fairly good French because I was
Yeah.
like, you're Irish. They won't be like, oh, the American. I was like, I don't want to, oh my gosh, I don't want to be that person. Oh my God, I feel so stupid. So we waited. But as they were like taking down, Keith was like, I feel really bad for these guys. So he went and got 2 cases of beer for them. And it was
Oh,
really
yeah.
hot. And they were so nice. And they like had a really good laugh at us and with us. And they took the beer and they were really nice. And then they even we didn't ask them to do this, but they even moved the car back exactly in its spot because it's such a tiny car. It took 4 of them to just,
So yeah, I was gonna clarify that they're just picking the car up and like moving
oh,
it.
they just picked the car up and moved it. Yeah, just just to move it. Like they were like, oh, c'est facile. I was like, okay, well, I'm glad you thought it was easy.
I mean, just the ability to do that was kind of a saving grace. You're not exactly going to pick up,
Yeah.
an American car and move it out of the way. So, yeah.
No. And you know what? The thing is, they could have gotten really annoyed and they could have had us towed. So I
Right.
was really thankful that they didn't because they could have just said, like, get it out of here, because they start setting up for the markets a lot of times at like 6 a.m.,
Yeah.
so plenty of time to still have a tow truck come and then be like, where is this place where's the car been taken? So they were so nice not to do it. So we were very thankful. So then once we got the car, and our suitcase in the car, we headed on down the road. It was only like 15 minutes down the road, but we saw it online and it looked so cute. And it's Marion Cotillard actually stayed here while she was filming a film that I actually saw while I was in Paris. It's very bizarre, but it's called like Bad Something, but it's in French. I'm sure you would. Anyway, but it's like, it's like mal something. Anyway, that's not important. The point is she stayed there and we found this out from the owners, but we arrive and it's this beautiful Provençal house. It's just, the shutters are all open and they're kind of like that beautiful turquoise color. And it's all that yellowy stone. And the driveway up was lined with those gorgeous trees. Even they're the same kind of trees you see in Tuscany.
Hmm.
They were just, it was beautiful. Everything was beautiful. He had this pool. And then the downstairs doors of the house had white curtains blowing in the wind. It was like, I wanted, in your head, you're like, this is a movie. I've just driven up to an exact scene that they would film out of a movie. And when
Yeah.
we arrive, the owners come out and they're so nice. And they're these husband and wife. They're 2 lawyers from Marseille. And this is their dream escape that they purchased, 10 years ago. And they have 4 kids. And, they just love to like get out of the city and just try to come up here as much as possible. And they just rent out the very top little apartment of this house that they have. And it has its own back little entrance. And, all the linens were so nice. Everything was just so thoughtfully done. It was not and I love IKEA, don't get me wrong, but, traveling full time for a decade, I live in a lot of IKEA.
Yeah.
And so having like, oh my gosh, this is like, everything had a thought to it. It was like they were going to have their family stay there, or maybe they would be staying in that room, so it was just
Right.
those added touches of, at the time I was like, oh, this is like added luxury, just having those little niceties that really make you feel at home and like you have an extra treat. It was just so lovely.
Yeah.
So, we went and freshened up because it was so hot and, you were just constantly sweating. And then they asked us if we wanted to come down to share a bottle of rosé because all of the best rosé in the world comes from Provence. So, they were like, come down and share a bottle by the pool with us. So we did. And of course they had like cheeses, and of course everything was local, cheese and meats and the freshest baguettes you've ever had in your life and, all the best things. And you're like, this couldn't be more magical. So we're having a good time and we're talking and the kids are playing and everyone's just, it's just lovely. And they had music playing as well. They had like built-in speakers, of course. It was just so nice. It was just, you go like, wow, this can't be life.
Yeah.
And they said, you're here at the perfect time because, they're harvesting all the lavender because in mid-July, and it only takes place usually around 2 weeks every year. It's very specific when they harvest it. So
Huh.
all like the whole area of Provence, it's like perfumed with lavender. It's incredible. The smell is like, there's nothing like it. And I grew up like having like lavender flavored, not lavender flavored, but like lavender scented detergents and things like that, but having like the real stuff, like proper essential oils, lavender, it's so lovely. And throughout the whole summer, there was all this food that had lavender in it. I mean, it was just, it was
Yeah.
in everything. And it was so nice. At first I thought I wasn't going to be a big fan. And it like changed my whole opinion and viewpoint on what lavender is. And, so they said, oh, this is only happening, you're here at the very perfect time, but they're actually, if we like go up the hill, about like 3 minutes this way, they're cutting it tonight. would you want to go? And I was like, well, yeah, like who's going to say no to that? You'd be stupid. No, we're going to go to dinner. I was like, yeah, let's go. So the sun was going down. It was probably like, I don't know, 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And we got in their Jeep. And I mean, it wasn't fancy. It was like filthy. It had been like off-roading. It was great. Like it was just everything I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And he brought like four stems, and I kind of was like, why is he bringing like stems? And then he was bringing a bottle of rosé, another bottle of rosé, and he like started up the hillside, and our Citroen could never have gone up here. Most normal cars could not. I mean, you needed to have proper tires to go up. It was like big divots and huge rocks. So this was not like a normal paved road. You were definitely going on someone's land, driving up the side of this hill.
And then quick question as you're
Yeah.
on your way there. So yeah, I mean I've seen lavender fields. I'm sure
Mm.
most folks have seen the pictures because it's just quite stunning, all that purple, right? Yeah, I didn't really like, is it a big deal? Like I guess this would be the lavender harvest, right? Like is that
Yeah.
a big deal for them?
Oh, yeah. And the markets, I mean, they have stalls that are just for lavender, and people who specifically like, they'll have it's not just like there's vendors who don't grow lavender and they'll sell stuff that's lavender, but they'll actually have farmers coming with their lavender, bushels of dried lavender, essential oils that they've made with the lavender. I mean, it's a big deal. And then in the restaurants, from I'm talking the bistros to sitting down at a Michelin star restaurant in Gourd or something like that, like there's in that season they infuse lavender into so many things just besides
Mm.
detergents and soaps and things like that. I was surprised at how many things had lavender in it, so many desserts. It was really interesting, and it was good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it's just a little early because I know they have like, harvest, you think fall, you think like that sort of changing of the seasons, and there's a ton of harvest festivals. So this is really interesting that it's this lavender season that you've stepped into.
Yeah. And it's in peak summer, which is cool as well. So many
Yeah.
people don't have to miss it if they're like, well, I can only really travel like if they have family or if it's their teachers or whatever. Like you can still go and you don't have to miss it. And one of the most famous abbeys is just outside of Gourd, Gordes. That's how you would like spell it if you're putting it
Yeah.
in. There's this abbey there, and there's monks that are still full-time running this abbey,
Yep.
and they're lavender farmers. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
they have like the best life ever. They also make wine, and then and in front of it though. So it's one of those that I'm sure if you put it into Google for Provence, it's one of the ones that will pop up, but it's in front of the abbey, and it's just these fields of lavender. It's some of the most like, I'm sure it's one of the most iconic photos for Provence, but you can't miss it. It just has to be seen. It's
Okay,
amazing.
so you're in a Jeep 4x4. You've
Yeah,
got your four glasses and your
4 glasses.
rosé, and you're kind of off-roading at the moment.
Yeah, we're off roading, and so we take about like 5 minutes going up this hill. It's not a mountain; it felt like one, but yeah, going up this hill, and all of a sudden, when you kind of come over the hillside, it was like probably hectares. It was just field after field after field after field, like as far as your eye could see, of lavender. It was incredible. There was no road nearby. You could not drive by this. It was just, we were so lucky to be able to see this. So it was all of this lavender. And then directly in front of us, the field we were standing in, you could see the lavender that had been cut. So there was no more purple, right? Like they take the entire
Right.
bushel, like it like it goes in this big circle when it blooms out. So it gets like really huge. So they cut it all back. So it's just essentially looks like brown fields then.
Right.
But from though, and then they have it at the very end, this huge pile of all this lavender, and there's steam coming off of it because
Hmm.
that had been put into the machines to like press it. So
Okay.
that was at the very end of the field, and there was all the steam coming off of it. But it was the smell, and the field was incredible. It was the most pure, truthfully, that I'll probably ever smell of lavender. It was incredible. So much so, it's not a surprise. I have a theater degree. Um, so I think stereotypically you'd be like, oh, theater people, they tend to be a little dramatic. But I started crying because it was just this very overwhelming moment of how did we meet such kind people that could have just said, oh, they're tourists, they're staying, we're going to be lovely to them, we don't need to go and do this, but to take us up, to share another bottle of their rosé with us, to give of their time, and to like get us to this place where we would have never found. It was just so special. And so then he like brings out the glasses and opens up the rosé and like unpops the wine and uncorks the wine. And he was just talking, and then he started talking about his grandfather and all of his history of his family in Provence. So he moved to Marseille to be a lawyer. But the family history that they have there, and that his family used to, his great grandfather used to grow lavender, and there was just, he just shared an incredible part of his family history, of something that was really important and special to him, with a complete stranger. And he gave of his time and his energy, and he was so generous. And it was just such a beautiful moment. And the sun was setting, and in the very back you can see like the mountains, kind of like the area like Gorge de Verdun, because you're really closer to that area on that side of Provence.
Okay.
And it was stunning. It's something I think about quite often when I think about how travel can move you, how going a little bit more off the beaten path by choosing to stay with locals, and maybe not just always staying at like the top 5-star, which is still lovely. I love a bougie 5-star, but like by doing something that's a little bit different, you can have an experience that you may never ever have in your life again, or that you would never have been able to experience otherwise. It's just
Definitely.
really, really special. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds magical, what you've been describing.
Yeah.
And I think the point is well put. What I was thinking through as you were telling the story as well, this is probably something that they love to do kind of every summer. It's very normal. Obviously drinking rosés is a very normal thing, but the lavender in particular. And that's one of the things I've experienced traveling too. Like I have stories where I was just with a local and they didn't think anything of it. They were taking around. I remember being in Greece and someone took me, like we wanted to grab food and I was with a friend and just went to this like small little town, and he walked into somewhere and was like, hey, do you have lamb, whatever, just start talking in Greek. And then they just like set up a table outside, and for them it was super normal and not a big thing. For me, I still remember it to this day
Yeah.
because the food was amazing. The location was so different. It was a beautiful night. Everyone was like very cordial and friendly. And it sounds like this experience was very similar for you. They were, like, oh, this would be a fun idea. Like, it's lavender time. This is important to us. We like to do this. Hop in the car. Let's go.
Yeah.
And like,
And I bet that was
unbeknownst to
some of the
them,
best Greek food you had.
oh yeah, it was amazing. I mean, uh, something about the like atmosphere too. I don't even know if it was the best Greek food. It doesn't really matter though, because it was such a fun little town with just local people sitting outside. But
Yeah.
um, unbeknownst to them and the people that you're with, they're creating this amazing memory for you that you hold to today. It sounds like.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's pretty dang cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. Um, So the sunset. How was the rest of your time with them?
Well, it was even more lovely. They invited us to have dinner with them, and their other friends had come up the next day. So we like swam in the pool and walked down to a local vineyard to do a tasting just down the road. And then that's how we found out, because they were like, oh yeah, actually we were contacted by this like film set. Marion Cotillard stayed here, blah, 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 so just so casually, like it wasn't a big deal, but yeah, it was so nice. And that was actually our last stay in Provence before we moved on to essentially the Gorge du Verdon area, which was its own adventure. But it was just, yeah, it was really special. And I think as well, just having like all the kids there, and like my husband Keith was playing soccer with them. Like it was a really, I think those are the things that create the things that make it stick more to you.
Yeah, more. It sounds more familiar, but more family like.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, more of a family experience. As you were saying, even the house, like inside where you're staying, felt more like home. It wasn't like Airbnbs that are just basically properties for investment purposes. They
Exactly.
just fill them with the IKEA stuff. You were staying
Yeah.
at someone's home, so
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, I've heard it lots of times. It makes you understand why people are like, well, why don't we just live in the south of France or Tuscany? Like, yeah, yeah, it's pretty special when in the summer the whole time you just have the best rosé, local food that's amazing, things like the lavender harvest, and there's other harvests that happen after that too. I feel like it's all just quite something special.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. And the affordability of it too. The affordability of the food and the wine when you're going to the markets. Like those are always things that just continue to shock me because you go like, wow, this is the nicest quality and it's not outrageous pricing like it is at home.
And I will say, actually, you can let me know if you agree or not,
Yeah,
because I feel like Paris gets a bad rep, but
it
people
does.
are a little bit are interesting in Paris, but outside of Paris, I mean, everyone I've experienced is just the nicest, super lovely people.
They are. I agree. I mean, I love Parisians, but I totally get a little bit of their grumpiness sometimes. You're
Yeah.
constantly surrounded by all these people who are coming to see some of the most iconic monuments in all of the world in one city. But no, like I agree. In Normandy, in Lyon, all the way to Provence and the Côte d'Azur, like I think they're such friendly people. And also in the South, I will say, because I said that like there's a lot of Parisians and people from Normandy that retire in the South
Yeah.
because it says they say you get 325 days of sun a year in the south of France,
Wow.
so that it automatically makes them happier people and more friendly. But I still think in the north they're friendly.
I mean, yeah. That vitamin D goes a long way, but so does, very healthy food and
Yes.
a healthy lifestyle, being outside, and the mountains are not too far away too in the winter. So yeah, just hard to beat that area. It's special.
Yeah, definitely is. Definitely is.
That's amazing. So, and I mean, since then you've been helping people go on trips like this, right? So
Yeah.
that's very, I mean, that's really cool, kind of fulfilling the full circle there.
Yeah, definitely. And it feels good to know that I think definitely like, we don't get those 12 weeks vacation like a lot of the French. So, our vacation time's really limited. So it just makes me really happy to know that, every hour of every day is being spent in a really great way for however they want to spend their vacation. Yeah.
That's great. And so these days, are you guys still moving around? Like, do you have your next kind of location planned for where you're gonna post up?
Yeah. So, well, actually, we're headed. So I spend my summers. I didn't say this, but I spend my summers just outside of Boston.
Okay.
That's where my family, my grandma has a little cottage there.
Yeah.
So we go for our normally we go for our summertime there. So that's like my little stint in the states. But we're headed to Tenerife, which
Yep.
is part of the Canary Islands. And then we're also headed to actually back to Paris for a month, which I'm really excited about because I need to do like a proper check in. I haven't been back since before COVID,
Yeah.
which is like, so I was like, I need to do a check in with my guides. And also, I just need to eat like a really affordable baguette, but the best baguette you'll ever have in your life, €1
Yeah.
30. It's crazy. So that's at the moment, that's what we have planned. I normally plan our life 8 months in advance, but I had a baby in October. So I've
Oh,
noticed
congrats.
like, thank you. So I've noticed like a little bit of like an adjustment where I'm like, I think because I was so used to just being like, oh, we'll just do this and do that, that I'm a little bit more, I feel like I've slowed down a little bit, but in a good way. Like I think we're kind of happy. We're what we've considered doing is maybe starting to do quarterly, like three
Yeah.
months, 3 month, 3 month, 3 month. Um, just because moving every month or most months for almost 10 years it's a long time doing it.
That's wild. It is
Yeah.
definitely a long time doing it. I mean, I travel as much as I can, and still, like, it's pretty exhausting. So, kudos to you. And yeah, I mean, with a child, even even as you said, we're talking through your Provence trip, like doing 2 days, 3 days, 2 days, 3 days, like just, yeah,
No, no.
it's nearly impossible.
Yeah. Home base would be so much better.
Yeah, home basing. I love a good home base, and then you go out from there. You can come back and get some rest, and yeah,
Yes. And even if you don't have a child, totally moving every 2 to 3 days is, you know, it's annoying. So, that was back before I am as old as I am now. That was back in 2017. So,
yeah. Well, at least you can still visit places and just say like professional curiosity. Like you're not just going to Paris to have that baguette. You got to check out, get the lay of the land,
gotta check in.
see if
Yeah.
things. That's awesome. Well, Rachel, I really, really appreciate you joining. This is a really fun story. Again, like I've had a lot of stories where locals make such a difference, and happenstance, just or serendipity,
Yeah.
kind of putting yourself out there in these situations, and it seems like this one was just like that. So yeah, love a good travel story.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It was really fun.
Well, a big thank you to Rachel for coming on the podcast and sharing one of her favorite travel stories. Again, if you want to find Rachel, you can go to her website at forthestory.vacations. You can also find her on Instagram, especially if you're planning that special European vacation. And as always, if you've got an amazing travel story to tell, you can find me at oneofftravelstories.com.